All right, let's bring in Teddy Covers on this Wednesday morning, representing Las Vegas, Nevada. Teddy Covers, my guy. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing just fine, Jimmy. How's San Jose, Costa Rica today?
I just keep it real simple down here. I don't go anywhere alone. So, it's
Really?
yes, really. I'm a mark, man. I'm a mark everywhere I go. My Jordans are too clean, man. They're too crisp. They know there's a gringo walking down the street, man. They know there's a target on my back at all times here. I go nowhere alone. So I'm looking forward to live in a city where I can walk freely wherever I want to go. Teddy Covers, we had Drew Martin on our show last night, and he gave us a couple more looks. So I'd like to start there, but it's Wednesday, and I know that at this point, you're formulating a plan. You're deciding what you're going to be on, what you're going to be off. So I love having you on these Wednesdays. So let's get right to Drew Martin here. Let's see what he gave us yesterday. So he added 2 plays on his card, and I should have it right here. Where is it? I can't find it. Okay, I'm going to have to find his action right now. It's going to take me a second. Why don't we move to our guy, Matt Randall's taint play of the weekend in college football, and that is Wake Forest, Boston College, under 69.5. What do you think of that?
So what does taint stand for? I mean, I know what it stands for in real life, but why do we call it the taint play of the week?
Well, we had a lot of taint talk about a year and a half, 2 years ago when some people didn't know what a taint was. We explained in great detail what a taint is, and it caught fire. It caught people's imagination. Not a lot of taint talk anymore. I don't know what's happened to this world. So Matt Randall saw a need for some action for his play today. He threw taint on it, and now it's history. Now it's the most famous play in our chat. So that's
it's a thing. All right, I appreciate that. You find Drew. I'll talk about Wake Forest and Boston College. My first gut reaction was over in this game. I think Wake's going to do whatever they want against Boston College defensively. We haven't seen anything from this previously stout BC defense that makes me think they're stout this year. I mean, again, the Kansas loss looks worse in retrospect. The Virginia Tech win doesn't look as impressive in retrospect. I'm not sold on BC's defense. And when you look at the matchups for Wake, they should be able to fire downfield in this game. Those 4 or 5 wide receiver sets are likely to give BC problems. So I think Wake's going to get theirs. If you're betting under, that probably correlates with the Demon Deacon side in this ball game, because that means that BC's not going to get there. But I wouldn't be shocked at all to see Wake get in the 40s in this game. I would prefer the Wake side. And total-wise, again, I'm not convinced BC's going to trade scores, but I do think Wake's going to approach or exceed 40 in this game.
Wow, okay, and a lot of people coming in liking Wake Forest. We have Jermel Wright on Wake Forest, -7. We also have Guru Sports on Wake. There's my guy, Astute Chaos, talking about my Boss and the Sauce shirt. I'm very proud. The Boss and the Sauce. You can catch the 3 of us live, 8 p.m. Eastern tonight with the Pick 6 show, not applicable liking Wake as well. Okay, I've jumped on. I now have our guy, Drew Martin's action right in front of me and the additions to his card. We're going to start with that USC Washington game. Let me get to spreads and totals here at sportsbookreview.com, the SBR odds page. Let's grab it right now and let's get to this USC game. Here we go. So we've seen this total open up at 59. There's 58.5 still on the board. There's 58s on the board, and Pinnacle's dropped it to 57.5. And Drew is already locked in USC Washington under 59.5. What do you think about that look? And do you agree with the market move towards the under?
So 5 minutes into Monday Night Football, I'm an idiot. I spent all week, just debating and thinking about it. And the right play in this game was the over. The total was too low, even given the defenses can score. And these are 2 teams going to chuck the football around, and Washington's not going to be able to run, so they're going to have to throw the football. And I'm like, the fundamentals were there for an over, even though the total was really low, and we respect the Bears' defense. When we talk about this total, all right, there's some fun things to discuss because you could be kicking yourself 5 minutes into the game for looking at this total perhaps the wrong way. The problem I'm having is I'm seeing both sides here. And that's going to keep me off the game. Washington USC is not one that I'm going to play. Let's start with this. I believe in the Huskies. I think that this year's Huskies team is as good or better than last year's team. Maybe better. Given Eason, the quarterback, plays definitely better. Browning was not good. Eason, there's talk he could be the number one over. Everyone's talking Herbert and Tua. This guy, Eason's moving up on the draft boards. I'll just put it that way. So we certainly like Washington's ability to move the football against this Trojans defense that has not been, it's not a shutdown unit. There's plenty of talent. They're not a dominant unit. I think Washington's going to get theirs, but you have a relatively conservative head coach. You have a USC team that can and will chuck the football around. And as we saw very clearly last week, their tall receivers are a problem, even for good defenses, even for a defense like Washington's. So the back door is open for USC. USC has a potential to score and score a bunch, given their receiving core and given the fact that I think they're going to be playing from behind in this ball game and forced to chuck the football around. So it's not an under I'm going to bet. And yet I respect the heck out of the Huskies defense. I'm not convinced USC is going to march the ball up and down the field. And I know that Peterson with the lead will play very conservatively. It's what he does. So if the Huskies are up 2 touchdowns in the second half or 3 score, they're up 17 in the third quarter, it's going to be a steady diet of how do we burn this clock. So it's not a total I'm going to get down on. Interesting game to consider. Very interesting one. But as I'm going back and forth on it, when I'm going back and forth, that means I'm not going to get involved. There's nothing worse than you're like, yeah, well, I kind of like this. Well, I kind of like that. And then you end up on one of them, then the other one comes through. You're like, I'm an idiot. Why did I, So when I'm back and forth, unless there's something that jumps at me, that really stands out information-wise, I usually don't play. And this is one of those games.
Moving on to Virginia Notre Dame. We've talked about this game quite a lot this week, and he is on the Virginia team total under. Virginia team total under, and he was actually, there's a question mark because he was waiting for it to come out. He was waiting for that to come out, so I've got to see if it's out. But he thinks that Notre Dame is going to slow down Virginia immensely, and we've seen this full game total go from 50 to 48.5. So I don't know if the Virginia team total under is out. There's a question mark beside it because that was a look that he wanted to grab but hasn't grabbed yet. What do you think of the idea?
Yeah, one would think in the 17 range. 17 and a half maybe for Virginia, somewhere in there. That's my guess. Off the top of my head, ballpark estimate. I haven't seen a number on it yet. And this is another one that I'm going back and forth on. My initial gut reaction was, oh my God, Virginia, this is a great spot. And then you start to look at the matchups, and you come to Drew's conclusion, which is how the heck is Virginia going to score in this game? Mendenhall is a coach who we like. He's going to run a little trickery, but this is not a team with fundamentally, they don't have explosive playmakers. And if you don't have playmakers against Notre Dame, it's going to be dink and dunk, and you're going to have to march yourself 80 yards down the field without shooting yourself in the foot against a good defense. I certainly wouldn't talk about a Virginia team total under. It's one that it does make sense. And again, the more I thought about this, my first lean, my Monday lean, I think we talked, I was like, yeah, Virginia. I'm not playing Virginia now, flat out. And the markets are telling us not to play Virginia. The money's come on Notre Dame, and my number came a little bit higher as well. So even my powerty numbers just said that Virginia might not be the right choice here. So I do worry about the Cavs' ability to move the football up and down the field. So team total under makes a ton of sense.
Interesting. So you're no longer believing in that Virginia plus the big points. Because CT Bay still likes it. And that was a move I almost made 48 hours ago, but held off. You're now lukewarm on the Virginia side plus the points.
Yes.
Okay.
Lukewarm at best.
Lukewarm at best. Okay, let's keep rolling. We have questions coming in from the chat. We'll start with Raymond Reichart because it's tomorrow's game. He says, what's Teddy's play on Navy-Memphis? Tomorrow night, Navy-Memphis, 103-104. Total open at 55. The bookmaker just brought it down to 54.5. Everywhere else still at 55. And we've seen back and forth. So earlier in the week, money was coming in on Navy. It got down to 10. Now it's back at 11 or 10.5 at some books. Navy-Memphis, have you decided to make a move?
So I'm interested in series history. I'm a guy that absolutely wants to know how these teams have matched up and how they played against each other in recent years. In my mind, that's much more important than something like common opponents for this year. You say, oh, well, this team blasted somebody and that team struggled with somebody, and therefore this team's better than that team. I don't buy that. Every situation is different. Every game is different. Just because somebody, the fact that somebody blew out somebody 1 week could absolutely affect what happened the next week, even though they played the same opponent. So I'm not a big fan of the let's look at common opponents. I am a big fan of you better know what happened last year and the year before and what's happened in this series history. You want to know the point spread history. You want to know how they've matched up on the field because in general, what you're going to see is comparable to what you've been seeing. That's not always the case. There are certainly years and seasons where teams take a leap up or take a leap down. And this year is a year where Navy was supposed to be taking a leap down. There was no respect for Navy in the offseason marketplace. There's been no respect for Navy in the regular season marketplace. It's a program that the wise guys are saying this isn't steady. This is a team that's in steady decline. And yet you look at this series history and you say, no freaking way am I laying double digits with Memphis. Navy's hung with them in every game. Navy's been beating them. Navy's been hanging around. Navy's been able to defend them. Navy's been able to handle the speed of Memphis. Navy has given Memphis problems with their schemes. The series history here is I can't lay double digits with Memphis because I don't think that the programs are that far different from where they've been over the last 5 years. And the last 5 years, there hasn't been a double digit difference between these two schools. So my lean is towards Navy. I have not bet it. I don't know that I will bet it, but that's the lean. 36 hours before kickoff? Not even.
My guy, our guy, Dutch Boy Fresh in the house. He has a couple questions. One's already been answered. The next question is North Carolina State, Florida State, 127, 128. Total opens up at 60. There are 60.5s on the board now, but it's still at 60, a 4-cent move at Pinnacle towards the over. And Florida State's been taking money, opening up -4.5, now -6 across the board. Teddy covers NC State, Florida State.
Hard game. It really is. I don't know what to do with Florida State right now. They, to me, are a head scratcher, and I'm not planning on getting involved in Florida State for the next couple of weeks until we get a better read on the team. Again, what happened last week where Florida State woke up, played a dominant half, fell asleep, trailed, and then found a way to win the game and then eventually cover the point spread in tough beat fashion if you had Louisville. You can make a case that's a buy sign, for a program that has struggled. And for all of their failures this season, not like it's the dead year. They're not 0-4. That's the whole thing with Michigan. Everyone's like, oh my God, Michigan, they're 2-1. Florida State's 2-2. They're not. It's not a hopeless season. It's not a dead season. And the fact they won last week, maybe there's some life there. NC State, the West Virginia game stands out to me, because they're laying a touchdown on the road or in that contest, and you watch two teams on the field and they're no better. They didn't deserve to be in that point spread range, and because they didn't deserve to be in that point spread range, and that's only a couple of weeks ago, I still think there's a decent chance they're a notch or two overvalued, even after losing that game, even after the market correction. But we've already seen the money come from Florida State, and Florida State's been a popular wise guy choice the last couple of weeks. Lots of talk. I'm not that close to making a wager. If I had to bet it, I'd lay it. I don't trust NC State.
Interesting. If I had to bet it, he'd lay it. Okay, we have two questions coming in from Handsome C. Handsome C says there's two unders that he's interested in. Which one, if any, do you think he should pull the trigger on? First one is BYU Toledo, 131, 132. BYU Toledo opened at 59, now at 60.5. BYU Toledo. The other under he's looking at is the 3 p.m. start here. So 5 p.m. Eastern start. Cincinnati Marshall. Let me grab it right now. Cincinnati Marshall. So both these totals that Handsome C is looking at have gone up. This one opened at 44.5 and now can be got at 47.5 at Bookmaker or 46.5 at BetOnline and Pinnacle. Teddy, the BYU under or the Cincinnati Marshall under or neither or both?
So let's start with this. I'm not going to try to talk you out of either play. They both make sense. Certainly, we've seen this Marshall team, even against some good offense. The Boise game stands out with the 14-7 final. The offense not quite good enough to move the ball up and down the field against good defenses. The defense good enough to hang around and make some plays. Since he's an under team, they're still an under team like they were last year. It's not so the matchup there makes sense for an under. It's not anything I would even try to talk you out of it. And the same story with the other game. that you're talking about. Which game was it? It's one that. Damn
BYU
it, I got it right.
Toledo.
Oh yeah, BYU Toledo. I'm such an idiot for now. You tell me, and then I lose track because I'm focusing on the one game. But BYU Toledo also. It's not one I'm going to play. BYU is a dead nuts under team. Their defense is a lot better than their offense, and they have no playmakers on offense. And for them tomorrow, but I think they're going to be able to move the football against Toledo. I think they're going to be able to run the ball, and if they run the ball, then they'll be grinding out first downs. They'll be putting the ball in the end zone because I do think they have a chance to wear Toledo down by the second half of that ball game. But it's not an explosive offense, and their defense isn't going to give up a whole lot of explosive plays to Toledo. So both these teams are likely to have to march up and down the field and execute their offense effectively to get this game up and over the total. So I wouldn't talk you out of either under, although I personally haven't bet either one, not yet. And with the totals moving up, you don't want to bet them yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you want to wait. He actually has a third under here that I didn't notice, and let me find it here. It's the Charlotte FAU. Here, I got it right here. 171, 172, Florida Atlantic, Charlotte under. This opened at 65.5. It is still there. We've seen Charlotte. We'll let you take it away. Florida Atlantic, Charlotte under 65.5.
So we've seen Charlotte light up the scoreboard, and when they played a weak defense, and we've seen them get completely shut down when they face a good defense. Where's Florida Atlantic on that list? I don't think they're a great defense. I really don't. Decent defense, but not a defense that I trust to have a shutdown effort. So it's not an under that I'm going to play.
All right. And we have Ramon Scott saying public heavy on Cincinnati Marsh over. Cincinnati Marsh over. And
let me jump in real quick there, Jimmy.
Sure.
If I could. Don't worry about public stuff in college football. Don't worry about consensus numbers. There's so many factors to consider. And if you look at the consensus, there's like 80 or 90%. Yeah, okay. You're 80% plus and everybody's on that. Okay. Maybe you want to, maybe that's not a play. It can be something that'll take a maybe and put it in there. Nah, I'm not going to bet this category. But I'm not getting on a play in college football because of consensus numbers. And in general, I'm not getting off a play in college football because of consensus numbers, especially when it comes to totals. The market's just, the public doesn't move the needle when it comes to college football totals. And even if 99% of the public is on ones that likes the over or likes the under, it's not moving the needle in the broader market. So you can look at consensus numbers, and it can be a piece of the puzzle. Certainly for NFL, it's something I pay attention to a little bit. In college football, people like to find reasons to talk themselves in and out of games. Consensus numbers is sometimes one reason to do that. In my mind, it's something that I would devalue. It's not, again, and if you have ridiculous consensus, you can pay, all right, that can get you off something. But if you see, 65% on something or 70% on something in college football, it doesn't freak me out at all.
Okay, interesting stuff. Now we've got Northwestern, Wisconsin. This is a question coming in from Bob Taylor. Bob Taylor says, Wisconsin, Northwestern, over 45. This is 113, 114. We've already seen this number climb up to 46.5 at Pinnacle. Northwestern win Wisconsin. Is the over in play? The market is saying it is.
So I like the side a lot more than the total in this ballgame. And again, you look at series history, you look at line history, and this one's out of whack. And I know I stepped in front of Wisconsin last week, and I slap myself on this show every day, Jimmy. I got to do it again. This is a double slap because of how wrong it was. But I went against Wisconsin last week, and I was dead wrong. And you know what? I'll fade Wisconsin again this week. This price is wrong. From a total standpoint, though, I don't see it. I would not be shocked to see Northwestern put something on the board. It's not like their offense has been marching up and down the field, but Wisconsin's defensive effort the first three games, that's not sustainable. It isn't. And you look at this series history, and it's all, 2 touchdowns or less every year. I think once in the last 10 years there was a Wisconsin blowout, but it's the exception rather than the rule. But from a total standpoint, I think Northwestern's going to get some points. I think they're going to get enough to hang around. I don't know that Wisconsin's going to light up the scoreboard here. So, I could see a 24-10 type of game. and I could see more like a 30-20 type of game. So it's not a. I think Northwestern hangs, but total wise, I really don't have a strong take.
All right, let's keep rolling. Perfect Rotation says, ask Teddy. Clear overreaction for Auburn minus 11. There is still an 11 at Bovada. It's 10.5 now across the board against Mississippi State. He says, or is this where it should be? He says, if this is an overreaction for Auburn, Miss State will be probably my biggest bet. I love Mississippi State at plus 11.5. He says, I get this line at 8.5. Now, there are no 11.5s on the board, but what do you think about Perfect Rotation wanting to back Mississippi State?
So Mississippi State might have found a quarterback last week. Unfortunately, it's going to be a Frost QB making a road start for the first time against an elite defense. But you say, why? Because Moorhead's offense was so good at Penn State. He was a genius at Penn State. He really was. That offense clicked, and the play designs were brilliant. And game after game, I was so impressed with Moorhead as OC in Happy Valley. And we haven't seen that translate into Starkville. Why? What's the issue? With Mississippi State, I think it might have been the quarterback. Stevens wasn't the perfect fit for that offense. They found the Frosh last week, and he went in and played great against Kentucky. And he's supposed to get the start here. Do you want that Frosh Q? I mean, we certainly are seeing Auburn off a huge win, but overreaction, no. When you're talking about this stage of the college football season, there are enough data points now that one game is not going to dramatically adjust a team's power rating. Look at Michigan this week laying 28 against Rutgers, and that's after 3 games, that they haven't covered the spread. And some teams have played 4 already. But at this stage of the campaign, it's not a time where you'll see letdowns, you'll see step ups, you'll see all that kind of stuff. But one game doesn't influence the betting markets so dramatically that you can say, oh yeah, that's a way overreaction. 2 or 3 games will and can and do, and if Auburn blows out Mississippi State this week, we could see for sure a price tag on Auburn next week that may not be fully warranted. But just a single victory, and it didn't come in blowout fashion. In my mind, I mean, this power rating number, the point spread is right by where my power rating number was for Mississippi State. So this isn't a situation where I'm looking at it and say, the market's totally overreacted. That being said, I've been fairly high on Auburn all year, so I'm not surprised that my number comes in this point spread range. Auburn's been a team that I've been interested in so far this season.
Casano Magic says, can you ask Teddy about UCLA plus 7.5 at Arizona, please?
So I'm not playing UCLA. There's no way I'm playing UCLA. I mean, I don't know how many people stayed up late to watch that last week. I did. It was as fluky as it gets. All right. They were getting killed in that game. I turned the game off and then turned it back on. That's right. I mean, they were down 32 in the second half. And what happened? Washington State turned it over again and again and again. They had 6 turnovers. And they're like, here, UCLA, you go. And then, McLeod Thompson got caught fire. And next thing you know, there's making plays all over the field and one touchdown after the next. And they rally back. Not do it again. I'm not buying that UCLA solved all their problems with the win last week. I'm not buying that the focus level is where it's going to need to be here. Not that I'm excited about laying a price with Arizona, especially more than a touchdown. I'm not. But I wouldn't be, let's use the inappropriate expression. UCLA might have shot their load last week. I'm not convinced that they're going to be able to bring that 2 weeks in a row.
I agree with that. Look, we have Greg Mattson. Our guy Greg Mattson says, Teddy, any updates on my hometown Stanford Cardinal this weekend? I got them at 3, hoping I'm on the right side. Thank you.
Sure, and the markets certainly agree with you. In a big way, Stanford's been one of the bigger movers in early week play. And it's the type of opponent they're supposed to beat, even with all the problems that they've had, even with the injuries. Even with the brutal travel schedule for the Cardinal, they're supposed to beat Oregon State. And they're supposed to beat them, defensively, the Beavers are dicey, to put it mildly. So, and you have the good number in your pocket. Hold it. Stanford -3. And if they lose the game, we know, there's a couple of There's a couple of games this week that to me are absolute statements. If Stanford loses this game, they are bet against the rest of the way. This is not a team that's going to bounce back off a loss to Oregon State necessarily in a 1-4 start. And there are a couple of teams like that. If we get to them, we'll talk about it.
My guy Solgard in the house wants to know Kansas TCU. TCU minus 16, 163, 164. Minus 16, this total open at 48, now 49. Kansas TCU, Teddy.
Kansas beat them last year. Kansas didn't beat anybody last year. They beat TCU. TCU coming off a loss in theory, so you have a TCU team coming off a loss and in revenge against a bad team. So in theory, you're like, yes, TCU, lay it, of course. And then you start looking at the particulars of this Kansas team. And number one, again, they came in through the back door for some last week. They trailed by 2 scores, scored a late touchdown. They end up losing by 5, depending if they laid 4.5 with West Virginia or 5 or 5.5. The line bounced between there all week. I was able to cash a ticket at 4.5 on West Virginia, but I was impressed with Kansas. I thought West Virginia would wipe the field with that team, and it wasn't the case at all. So Kansas is clearly a notch or two better than I thought they were going to be. And TCU, what do we have to love about this team? Nothing. They beat Purdue by margin in a game where Purdue didn't have their quarterback, and Purdue's not that good. And that's what we have to be excited about TCU this year. So it's a situation for me where if I had to play it, again, free bet, I'll probably take Kansas plus. I think it's too many points. I stepped in front of the Jayhawks last week and was lucky to cash my ticket, and I'm not looking to do it again right away. But given the awful loss, given the revenge mode for the Horned Frogs, if they get a chance to kick Kansas, I think they will. And that's going to ensure that I'm not going to take the points with the Jayhawks, because TCU and Gary Patterson, when he's mad, he'll stick that fist right where the sun don't shine. And that could happen here. If TCU brings their A game, Kansas won't be able to compete.
Sue's 387, whom we love dearly, out of Hawaii, says Hawaii versus Nevada. Nevada's been at 2.5 all week, but Bet Online just brought it down to 1.5. This total's dropped a point from 65.5 to 64.5. I did talk to Big Boss about this spot. Teddy covers Hawaii, Nevada.
I don't know why this total got bet down. Nevada's got a defensive weakness. They can't stop the pass. All right. The potent passing games are going to be able to throw the football against that Wolfpack defense. And that means Hawaii is going to be able to throw the football against that Wolfpack defense. That being said, Nevada's got a nice balanced offense. Hawaii's underside in the defensive front. They're not the type of team that I'm excited in any way about asking. I'm going to ask Hawaii to make stops all game against a physical Nevada front. So I really think that this is the type of game that has the potential to be a shootout. Last team with the ball wins. Sidewise, I'm not interested. Total-wise, clearly, I'm looking at the over.
Looking at the over. Interesting look. There you go. Sue's 387. We'd like to know what you're on as well, but Ron Walsek says, please ask Teddy to expand on his theory involving smaller conferences that he mentioned on Monday. So, you broke some stuff down involving how you handle smaller conferences. And Ron Walsek, I know it's kind of it's not an easy question because it's so open-ended, but we love Ron Walsek here dearly, and wondering if you could expand on your theory involving smaller conferences.
Yeah, so Jimmy, and I'm going to ask you this too, because a lot of times we do game breakdowns. We're spending most of our time on game breakdowns, and some of the theory here is important to discuss. Some of the concepts of why we're looking at what we're looking at when we're looking at it. And it's something I brought up on Monday and never got a chance to talk about. So I'm going to talk about it here for a minute or two and try to explain exactly what I was talking about.
Perfect.
When you come into the start of the conference season in college football, you're going to see all kinds of teams, especially in the smaller conferences, your CUSAs and your Sunbelts and your MACs, and even your AACs, your Mountain Wests, etc. You guys know the smaller conferences. You're going to see some teams that have looked awful in non-conference play. They've gotten wiped off the mat. They play this paycheck game and that paycheck game and this step up in class game, and then they stepped down against someone and didn't look good. Those teams can often be really undervalued at the start of conference play because what happened over the first month of the season is not who they are. They played a couple of paycheck games. They had a flat spot, yada, yada. And once conference play starts, those teams are dramatically undervalued. Similarly, you can find teams, hey, they stepped up in class and played well against a Power 5 foe. And then they blew out some FCS squad. And they look really good on paper. The statistical profile looks better than you think it's going to be. And those teams tend to be overvalued coming into conference play because, again, everything resets, everything normalizes. And those early season results that have disparate effects on power ratings and point spreads, they're not in play anymore. They're playing against teams that are kind of like them. So I often find at the beginning of conference play with the smaller conferences, I'm going to take some points with some teams that have looked downright ugly in early games and lay some points with teams that haven't lived up to expectations at all, expecting that what we saw through September, through the early part of September, is not necessarily who these teams really are. And the chance to reset at the start of the conference campaign gives them a chance to be what we thought they were going to be coming into the season. So it's a reset time, and the markets don't reset here. So I find much more in the smaller conferences over the next few weeks than I do at any other point during the season.
Oh, that's great stuff. Absolutely love that. Great question, Ron. Shell Dog says, school is in session. We have one last question coming up from Jeremy Williams, and then we'd love if you could give us a couple games that you're interested in to help us through our weekly study. Jeremy Williams says, ask Teddy about Utah -5 versus Washington State.
Well, that was one of the games I was going to give you.
Perfect.
I'm going to give you 3 games. That's one that I bet already, and I probably shouldn't have. I bet Washington State plus. And it looks like the money's going to come to Utah. It looks like Zach Moss is going to play. And I got down at a bad number. I took +5.5, and I think it's going to go higher. But I think, again, series history here shows very clearly Wazoo can hang with Utah. They've done it in every recent meeting. You think about both teams coming off the upset losses last week. All right? And again, I talked about how Washington State, it was a fluky loss. And they do that. They've done that every year under Leach, where they have a fluky loss or two. Washington State's never going to compete for national titles. They're not good enough. They don't bring it every week, and they don't hold it for 60 minutes every time. But they have shown the ability with consistency to move the football against Utah's defense. I don't think that changes. And Utah is not explosive offensively, especially with the quarterback banged up and Zach Moss banged up, even though they're both likely to play. Neither one's 100%. I don't know the Utes can win here by margin. I like Wazoo in that game for sure. That's one that I put in my pocket. And again, I kick myself sometimes. I don't get the best of the number every time myself either. I do the best I can. I'm not perfect, but I put Wazoo in pocket at +5.5. I probably should have waited. I think we might see 7s.
Washington State, Wazoo, the first look on Teddy's card. Can't wait. Dutch Boy Fresh says, I like Utah to win this game. Well, you know what? That's what the points are for. That's what the points are for. Washington State plus the points. What are the next 2 looks that you want to talk about on this card?
Oh, I mean, I played Northwestern +24 at Wisconsin. I understand I got my teeth kicked in betting in Wisconsin last week. I'm still, again, when you look at their series history, the point spreads in recent meetings, and, I mean, do you really think this Wisconsin team's a top 5 squad, or are they kind of where Wisconsin's been? I kind of think they're where Wisconsin's been. Do you think Northwestern is way, way down from where they've been, or are they kind of where they've been? Yeah, this isn't one of Pat Fitzgerald's best Northwestern teams. They're not a disaster. 24 is too many, flat out. You know, it's just one of those situations where I understand what they rolled Michigan last week, and now they're in revenge to Northwestern as well. 24 is too many. I took the points with the Wildcats, and I took the points with Kansas State at Oklahoma State. Is this one we talked about already? I'm not sure if I mentioned it. But, you know, that's one that absolutely stood out to me with K-State. Kleeman's bet on. And I'm not sold on I was reading some statistical profiles talking about how Oklahoma State's going to be able to run the football down Kansas State's throat because if you're trying to beat college football betting stats in September, good luck to you. But the markets are. I'm not buying that Kansas State's run defense is garbage, and I'm not buying that Oklahoma State's, going to win this game by a touchdown or more. That's a competitive contest. K-State's live.
Oh, I like these looks, all plus points spots. Ramon Scott agreeing, saying 24 is too many in the Northwestern spot. Should be no higher than 21. Guru Sports says, I like Utah -5. I can see them winning by 2 TDs in that spot. Ramon Scott liking the Wazoo Utah under. What do you think about that? What do you think about the Washington State Utah under?
Well, see, the issue I have is that Utah's defense has not been able to shut down Washington State. Washington State's been getting their points. And we saw Utah's defense last week against USC, a potent passing game with big receivers. They didn't shut that down either. So Washington State's not a team I'm excited about playing unders with. I'll just leave it at that. When you're playing under in a Wazoo game, the whole game, you're just sitting there. There's no safe point where you're like, okay, we're in great shape now. They could score 4 touchdowns in 5 minutes in a Wazoo game, and you can't say, oh, that's a bad beat. That's just how they play.
I love it. Teddy covers. There we go. Teddy's looks for this weekend. Washington State, Northwestern, Kansas State, all plus the points. Teddy covers, thank you so much for joining us. I love this. And NCAA football kicks off tomorrow. Tomorrow we got games coming in. So tomorrow, Friday, will be very exciting shows with Teddy Covers here every day, every morning, Monday to Friday. Teddy Covers, can you let everybody know where they can follow you on Twitter? You are a great follow on Twitter. Every low bagger out there, please follow Teddy Covers. A lot of excitement, especially on the weekends. What's your Twitter handle?
@Teddy_covers. Follow me. I appreciate it. Thank you.